Welcome to another episode of the Golden Age of Gear, and it is a very, very special episode for us because we have our good friend Dan Huff joining us today.
Hey.
We're down in Nashville for a couple of events and things, and I asked Dan if he would come out because I just got this killer new James Tyler Studio Elite in, I think they call it white Shmear. And you have one similar to this in Colorado, I think, right?
I couldn't tell it apart if you put it in front of my face. Yeah. Love the guitar. Love it.
Yeah, James is, or I should say Rich Rankin is who we're close with over at James Tyler. And I actually never got to meet Jim. He was kind of already kind of stepped away for the most part when Rich started coming to hang out with us at NAMM. But I've known Rich for years, and he would come hang out with us at the NAMM show, and he'd be like, hey, can I leave a couple of guitars at your booth for guys to try? And I was like, please. And for years, I've got to play. There was one of yours that was it was like a yellow Dan Huff classic that they had that they would bring to the NAMM show, and we had it at our booth every year. And finally this year, when the show was over, Rich and I started talking, and I got to order one. So this is what I decided to go with, and it was actually after seeing you had posted on Instagram, or Rich had sent me a screen cap of the guitar that you had, and I was like, yeah, that looks cool. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, like, you know, you've got this, which is a replica of your 64.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to just kind of touch base a little bit about, like, what you like about Tyler's and what kind of sets it apart from other guitars from you.
Well, I mean, it goes back to when I was in my young 20s, took what I thought was a 63 Strat to Jim Tyler, and he basically did what you see here. It was the 80s. I didn't care about the original aspect of the guitar. It's kind of sad. I just didn't know, put it that way.
Yep.
Which is no big surprise. And he said, what do you want to do with these pickups? And I said, take them. I don't care. I'll never use them. I know. There was near a, and the guitar looked about like this guitar. It was pristine. It had one scratch in the back. It doesn't look like that now. But suffice it to say, the mods he put on that thing with the fact that I had the humbucker in the back, with all the modifications to the electronics, I was able to basically survive Los Angeles for 10 years using one guitar. Absolutely loved it, and Jim was phenomenal in what he did. And just, it's funny because when I look back at it, I didn't know enough to even think about it. It was just like it was there, and I started mucking with it. It would take me from all the heavy rock and roll stuff that I was doing to the real pretty, like, that kind of sound, the 80s kind of chorusy, like the chorus is going, it's still going. All the stuff that we used way too much. We took the tanks and emptied them, but it just was a one stop for me. I didn't need any other guitar, so it was great. Continued to use it in Nashville when I moved back in the 90s. Same thing, playing sessions. It worked in all the country records that I played on. And it wasn't until recently, a couple of years ago, they talked about the idea, because they had developed some of these other guitars, which I loved. I mean, because Jim built them, they felt known to me, put it that way. Everything that he did, from frets to just electronics, excuse me, it's how I related to guitar, making tones, at that time and age. And so when they said we'd like to make a model based on that 64, which I found out this last year, our friend Tom Bukovac told me that. And I said, great. And so they took the guitar apart, they took it over to Joe Glazer's place and took it apart and came up with this. And I mean, I told Rich when he brought it to me, other than one little modification I'm going to do on the way that the crowning of the frets are, I actually liked it as much, or side by side with that Strat, and that Strat's pretty, it's got a thing, it's a nice piece of wood. It forgot it was a tree a long time ago, right?
Yep.
And these are brand spanking new, but they have a feel to them. Same thing about I don't know what they call that one right there, but that one is a great one too. I have one of those out in Colorado.
Yeah, this is the Studio Elite.
Right.
I don't know if it's Studio Elite H or what it is, but I've always loved the next one. You haven't actually played it much yet.
I hardly played this at all,
and that to me is I'm not a professional guitar player, so to me what I care about is how does the neck feel. I can pretty much either modify or change anything else that I need to. But I was really impressed with, I thought the preamp that was in it that was going to be kind of 280s for me, and I'm not really going to use that.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
But it just adds this like layer of glass to it.
For the clean sounds, which is ironic. That's the one thing that I didn't realize. That leaving they've made it so on these guitars, or at least on this one, you can take the preamp out.
Okay.
But when you're playing clean sounds, it does add that little glistening kind of top edge, which works great if you want that kind of thing, So, so I consequently, I'll show you. Can I show you something?
Yeah.
So I just have a couple little.
Thanks for tuning in there, friends. Joey and I love talking about gear, whether it's with each other or any of our friends and other musicians, and that includes all of you guys. I love reading all the comments that you guys leave, so please drop us a comment, whether it's related to the gear that we're looking at today or not. Just let us know what you think is cool and what we should look at. And if you can do us a big favor, hit that subscribe button. All right, back to it.
Like ultimate, pretty clean, right? That's front pickup. Dial a little of this in now. Turn up. Just even that, and I don't have my glasses on, so I'm gonna have to pop these bad boys on here. The volume's not at 7, and the preamp is at 3.5, 4.
Oh wow!
So if you crank it now without so I'm gonna turn the guitar on 10. Again, this is not real heavy distortion, right? Crank that. When you get up here, it just sings, as opposed to, you hear that little bit of edge there, and then
wow.
Yeah, it's really expressive, and the fact that I got used to it being right there, and it just so as you're soloing, getting up the neck, you don't have to put on this another pedal on if you don't want it.
Yeah, it was really, really impressed. To the point that I was like, oh no.
Oh, I didn't have to do all that.
Yeah.
You were already impressed. Okay, good.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, so many of my other guitars don't have this.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to get home and be like, oh, that other guitar sounds dull now. Because that's what I find, is it just makes everything sound more alive to me. Yeah, fantastic. So what's on your guitar, like on the 64 reissue here, I guess we could call it, or copy, whatever it is. What are your toggle switches all doing on it?
These guys right here?
Yeah.
You're going to have to help me with the terminology.
Okay.
Rich always does. It splits the pickup, right? Is
okay.
That what it is?
Yeah.
So each pickup has its own switch.
Yeah.
Got it.
Take out the preamp. It just sounds a little more traditional, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And the great thing is, so as you're a lot of times based on the music, if you want a little more of this, you can add the front pickup anytime. These two pickups, and obviously, you change the. It's noticeable. It's not subtle. Subtle it's subtle. But it's not like the subtlety where you sit and switch back and forth and keep thinking, is there any difference here? I've had that on a couple guitars.
And on your original guitar, is it the exact same setup?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
I know it's got the switches, but you didn't change any of that.
You know what? No, it's the same thing. That push-pull here, which adds the front pickup, so you can have all three.
Yeah.
Which I don't think I've ever done that before. And it actually sounds better with a clean tone. That I wouldn't use that for distortion.
Sure.
But eventually they put on this first volume that disables the preamp, which I don't think I've ever done either. But I can if I want.
You can if you need to. Yeah.
Cool. And then the main thing is when other people get these guitars, they think this is the tone control at their peril.
Yeah.
It's just the big hairball there. Yeah.
That's awesome. I noticed you were gracious enough to let me preview your new record, which this episode will come out right around when your new record comes out. Either
my only record.
Your only record.
Yeah, Derek.
Yes.
Well,
okay, your only solo record.
I love all your records.
I was going to say,
all my record. Thank you.
Yeah. I've listened to every one of your records.
the thing that I mean, there are a lot of tones on it that I just absolutely loved. I mean, what I assume is your neck pickup, kind of dirty Strat tone, like on Colorado Creeping, like the lead parts on that are just, it's kind of the, my favorite style of Strat tone.
Yeah.
But I noticed a lot of different kind of textures where it seems like you're using either your toggle switches or definitely using different pickup combinations compared to
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how much of, when you were writing that record, how much of, the instrument being able to do that played into that? Like, did you pre-think of those kind of parts, or was it just you were adding stuff afterwards and thought, okay, you know what, this will sound, this is the sound I need?
I mean, it was more simple than that. It was I just was writing it. I decided to do it, and I started writing it. And so as you're structuring a song, I mean, I couldn't help but have my writing hat on, but my production hat on. So there's always an art to a song, that you want to hear. You want to hear the climb, you want to hear level off, and then it kind of hit a peak and then bring it back down. So all I had was some drum loops. So I would write every day. I would just pop in a drum loop until I got inspired by it, and then start writing to that. And if there was, like on that Colorado Creepin' was that. That's all I had at first. It's slightly out of tune, isn't it? With the groove, and that's basically all I had, and that sounded good. I liked it. It was kind of vibey. It was like, just right off the bat. By the way, should we talk about your amp too and all that stuff?
They all know about that. You can.
About you bringing this amp in?
Yes, sure.
I mean, should I go into that or not?
Yeah.
Okay, because it all plays in. I was intending on making demos. That's all it was.
Yeah.
So I wasn't into this idea of which guitar, which combination, which cabinet, all that kind of stuff, which takes up a lot of headspace because you're projecting kind of, well, I think this will sound good. I wrapped that all up in the kind of the file of I'll do that later. So I didn't know at the time. I was just playing the guitar, and so the idea was you'd brought this amp, this 40-watt amp, and what do you call this guy again?
It's called the Dynamis D40.
The D40.
D40.
Okay. Yeah, and so you and I got along. You said this was a really good amp, so I took you at your word and just plugged it up and mic'd it up and started playing. And it's so friendly to the pickups on the guitar. And I think I also had this Pro Shop Fender. I think it's like a '59 remake or something like that. You saw it at the house. It was kind of. Whatever it is, it's a traditional Strat, so it's really low output. It's great. This amp was great with it. I started using like the Strat when I need to start soloing and have a little more giddy up and go. So all those parts on these songs, and there was no pedal board. It was. I think I had pretty much, and probably too much reverb on the record, but I couldn't get away from it because I ended up to finish the story. I'd say 80. Maybe up a little bit from 80% are the demo guitars, because I ended up coming back with all the big gear that I have amassed and what my preconception about what the record should sound like, and I didn't like it as much after. So because I basically took the demos into a studio. All I had is a couple of guitars and a drum pass, and I took it in the studio with great drummer and a great bass player, Jerry Rowe and Mark Hill, locals here in Nashville.
Oh yeah.
And the initial idea was I was going to use a lot of my friends, but I was going to keep it Nashville just because this is where I live.
Yeah.
And they devoured all the material within 2 days.
Yeah.
And so it was like, well, that's the record. Take this stuff back home. Let's start playing guitar for real, right? You know the feeling, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it just didn't have the identity. I mean, as I was playing, my chops were getting better because I hadn't really played guitar seriously in quite a while, because I've produced records, right? And so I thought, okay, now we're going to get here. It was already there. And I punched in stuff as I needed, but all those tones were basically just a guitar, very little processing, a little bit of reverb, inside Pro Tools, and that was about it. Or this Supermoon Mr. Black pedal. And that was, it's all pretty much the way the amp relates to your hands.
Yeah.
And that was it. Not much more than that. Was that your original question? Because I just went off on a tangent that was ridiculous.
great.
No, it's
Perfect.
perfect.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Because I forgot the question.
What are some of the amps that you were, like when you went to sort of replace all your demo tracks and discovered that the demos were the thing? What were some of the choices that you were trying to make?
Well, my matchless I've had since 1990 for sure, which has been which I've used that thing, for what, 3 decades now. Fantastic amp. And then another one that I use quite, we were talking about before we started rolling on this, was the Bogner Ecstasy.
Yeah, sure.
And it's a great solo amp. I use it on the second channel. It doesn't move off that, but it has such a great response. It's a great amp.
Yeah.
But I was going for tones that on this project that were more influenced by what I listened to in the late 70s.
Cool.
Right? So it's just, it's more, and you can hear, my technique isn't perfect, and you hear you can hear that. You can hear the strings. You can feel a little bit of personality. I wasn't whitewashing it like I did in the 80s. I had so much distortion and goop and shit on everything I did.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell whether I was playing clean or not. But this really made me work, and I responded to that because I could hear kind of everything I liked about all those records. I could hear that, and why I wouldn't apply that to myself was kind of the question I had to answer, and I did answer it. And so this guy ended up being the amp, and pretty much 1 or 2 guitars. That was it. I think I used a Les Paul for one part on one song, and I may have used that matchless or a Bogner on one part, and that was it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I have 2 little kids at home, and I think my hands have never been in great shape. Like, I'm not a great technician necessarily.
You're a badass player, I'll tell you that much.
Well,
Listen to yourself.
Stop this.
Yeah.
Okay, come on.
Yeah.
But they've never been in worse shape than they are now. But I like my playing more now than ever before.
Yeah.
And I think it's because, like, some of the facility that I've had in the past that I don't have has forced me to think less guitar-y and a little more musical. And I think there's something really special about that. And that's when Derek gave me the link for your record, or someone shared it with me. And anyways, I listened through it, and that's one of the things that I really love about that record is it's like, while it's an instrumental guitar record, it like all the songs on it feel like songs. You know what I mean?
Good.
Like, it really feels incredibly musical. And I put it on at home, and my daughter, who's 4, she's got really discerning taste. And she came down the stairs like all, puffy-eyed, and was like, "Oh, Dad, what's this?" I was like, "Oh, this is the new Dan Huff record."
Really?
He was like, "Oh, I really like this." I was like, "Okay." And normally when I have guitar music on in the house, she's like, "Turn it off! I want to hear Sabrina Carpenter," or whatever. But she was like, I'm not lying at all. She was like, we listened to the entire record 2 times through.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was very, very musical and very, very beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, obviously I've stated this before. But who amongst us doesn't love Jeff Beck, right?
Yeah.
And I had the same experience, not with actually took one of my daughters, but she wasn't 4. But my wife Sherry loves pop music and Motown and all that.
Yeah.
She's not a real big fan, shall we say, of instrumental music either. And I took her one time to a Jeff Beck concert down in Atlanta, and thinking, oh, she's just going to endure this. And she said pretty much the same thing as your 4-year-old.
Yeah, cool.
The music there, like when he would do his records, there was no delineation between. It wasn't like there was a song written for a solo. It was all a solo, right?
All music.
It's all So the solo is part of the composition, but it wasn't like it was the head exists only to facilitate an impressive solo.
Yeah.
The head actually was as much of a solo, and that's what got me about that era of music. And of course, I grew up in that era of the 70s. And so those records, it wasn't like there weren't chops. I mean, there was, at that time, Al Di Meola was a big influence on me, and I'm all for chops. It's like, but in service to the composition.
Yeah.
And also, like you, I say, Joey, that I like having the facility, and I still practice, but I like struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it makes you I heard a great story about Robin Ford in one of his solo records that he, the producer, told me that he had a tough time with it because his chops were down. I thought, shit, the chops were great, but I could hear that struggle.
Yeah.
You know, that it's like when it's too easy. I mean, I can tell you this, and this is if I tour this record a little bit, I'm going to probably do some gigs, and anybody that comes out, if I start playing randomly fast shit, that just means I ran out of ideas. Because that's what I do. I can't help it. And
Hey, you do that too?
yeah, we all do that, and that's something, you know. And some of it's okay; it doesn't matter. But you know, it's like it's something to be aware of. And plus, you know, the guitar players, we all scroll on Instagram, right? You know, and it's nice to know that you know there are people doing stuff that I could never dream of anymore. So I put that to bed, right? And that's a good thing to put to bed. We play to your ability, and you know, I mean, always reaching up, but you don't have to be everything.
Yeah.
It's just be yourself, be who you are. And how's that for my motivational speech?
It's great.
Yeah.
That's going to be we'll put it in quotations across the screen. Be who you are, Dan Huff. I always feel like, you know, going out to see music and watching people take zero risks, but play their asses off all night.
Yeah.
And they don't miss a single thing. To me, it's like, it's a display of athleticism, but it's not, there's no art in that. Like, and maybe there's like, and not to, I mean, it feels like a generalization and I'm probably missing the point. I think the art is in like the preparation and stuff, but when I go see a show, like I would way rather see somebody try something crazy and crash and burn than watch them, you know, sort of hold back to, you know, 75%, but not take any risks.
Yep.
That's always more exciting to me anyway, when somebody's just like on the edge of their seat.
I used to tell people about you specifically, and I won't name the other guitar player that when you were being compared to somebody, I would say like the difference between these two guys is that one will never miss a note. It will be technically perfect. It's going to be great. I'm like, when I watch Joey play, you may hit 5 or 10 wrong notes, but I'm still going to pick my jaw up off the floor. Because,
Shucks.
5 or 10,
like,
That's it?
yeah. Like the amount of times I've seen you play. 'Cause, I mean, I told you that early on that we were actually down here. One of the first times we were down here, we were shooting a video at Blackbird with their Overdrive special because it was the first time both of us got to play a Dumble. Yeah. And I was having him replay the solo from one of the songs off of his solo record that I loved. And you would never play it the same. Like we did, I don't know how many takes. And I'm like, the take on the record is to me the perfect take that you had, right? So then when we're redoing it, I'm just like, he's not doing it exactly the same. And anytime I'd see him live, I'm like, it's never exactly the same. But there's nights that I would see you do it that I was like, it's as good or better. It's just different.
Yeah.
And it's because, I agree with you. Like I really liked how you put it, that it's a display of athleticism. Like that, to me, I mean, we've recorded guitar players like when we're doing video shoots where we've had people not allow us to release stuff because they were so concerned about how well they played. And to all of us that were in the shop or in the studio or whatever it was at the time, none of us really noticed anything because these are all phenomenal guitar players. Yeah. Yeah. But they're like, can we not release that? Or if you're going to do something, can you please send it to me ahead of time? And you sit there and you're like, oh, okay. And they truly are upset about their playing and asking to punch in and change things. And I'm like, oh, dude, this was a quick, like run and gun demo.
Right.
And you sounded great. Like that to me, like I could not live in that space at all. And like that's where, like when you talk about like kind of play to your own ability, like yes, practice, yes, strive for new things. I learned a long time ago not to try to compete with other guitar players and to be happy where what my skill level is, because that's what I actually enjoy doing. Right. So I'm happy to be there, and I'm happy that I'll never be as technically proficient as either of you or any of the other guys that are in the room here, but I can play everything that I want to be able to play, right? And I can get the sounds that I want. And I think a lot of guitar players get way too hung up on like, oh, it's gotta be perfect. Especially in the age of Pro Tools, where just erase it and punch in.
Yeah. That was well said. It's but it takes a little bit. It takes a little bit of living, I think, sometimes to not. But we're all afraid of being vulnerable, right? We want to be perfect. I don't want people to see me make mistakes.
Yeah.
But it's like if you. Well, I'll go back. When I listen to players, I feel the same way as what you guys described. I'm wanting to hear somebody open up, right? Problem is, we don't apply it to ourselves because we don't want people. We want everybody to think we're great, and I've noticed that's what shuts me down. The more I'm worried about being impervious to mistakes or to comparing. Because all I do is when I'm playing the guitar, when I'm in my element doing it, I'm not thinking about anything.
Yeah.
The second I start thinking about it, some of my friends hearing me play, or some of my peers, like the other day, a guy who I've always just absolutely admired is Steve Lukather.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a dear friend, and he was somewhere out of the country playing. I think Toto was still playing, and he said, "Hey, I heard you put out a record. Can you send it to me?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "The second this plant is attacking me here, the second I hit send,
Oh shit!
I clenched up. My sphincter just like that, And I thought, a moment of terror because here's this guy who I've known all these years, and he helped me so. I can't measure how much he's done for my career as a guitar player. Some of the things he said in the '80s, when I was following in his large wake, shall we say. And I think he's a stunning musician. And then all of a sudden, it's like, you're going to listen to my record. It's like, all of a sudden, everything on my record sounded wrong to me.
Yeah.
And then I finally had to say, you know what? Screw it. It doesn't make a difference. Because you can only be you, right? I can only be me. And that's what we got to do.
Yeah.
That's what we got to do, Anyway, sorry, but that's a long-winded answer on
No,
that.
I really love that. On my last, I play in a band with my brother, and on our last record, we got one of our favorite mixers to mix it, and we got this fella, and the previous records that we'd made, we're not a difficult client by any stretch, but I'm pretty specific about what I want to hear, and we would deliver like a fair amount of revisions, and here's where I want the background vocals, and this is how I want this treated, and this is feeling like a little overcompressed, yada yada yada. We got the mixes back from this guy, and it was not at all what I was expecting. It was really cool, but it was so far from my rough mixes, and I had this moment of like, well, am I gonna pay this guy his rate and then undermine his own creativity just to basically mix the record through him? Or am I just going to go, I'm trusting this guy to impart his own thing on my project so that it's the record that he mixed and not the record that I kind of mixed badly through him. And it was like this really freeing moment for me.
Oh, really? So you let it go?
I let it go, and I think in total on the entire record, there were 2 or 3 revisions on the whole thing. And a part of it was like I started to believe in his sort of vision, but it was like, I like the background vocals a little louder, and the kick drum could be a bit pillowier on this tune.
Right.
Other than that, it was really great. And it really like, I learned a lot in that one little moment about collaboration and trust. And it's changed, just like having a little tiny moment of clarity, it changed how I play entirely. And it's so cliche, but when my daughter was born, my first daughter was born was during the pandemic, and I was off the road. And so I was, my wife and I were both just stay-at-home parents with our daughter, and watching her like learn her environment, start to play, and I was just really inspired by the things that she would do in her, like with her imagination, and just without the self-consciousness of like, how does this look? How does this sound? Whatever.
Yeah.
And it was really inspiring. It's like, I want to play music like that. I want to play music from a place where I'm not actually worried if anybody's going to like it or not, or if they're going to question my decisions. I just want to like, when she plays, she's just chasing after the next thing that catches her attention. That's how I want to play music. And it was like, it's like probably it's a singularity moment for me in my life of like letting go of that. And I think I have to fight pretty hard to keep track of it, because, just like everybody, there's moments where like, I'm sitting next to Dan Huff. I want to play the coolest thing I know how to play. Oh shit! But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just to add to what you're saying.
No, that's learn to listen from the kid, man. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Plus, your daughter, is that the one that liked my record?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's her name again?
Yeah, her name's Joni. I'll give you her bank account number. Quick, start a bank account for the kid. Yeah. I did have some questions for you. I'm like, so to out myself, when I was coming up as a young guitar player, all I wanted to be was like an LA session guy.
Okay.
And that was like, for a lot of my peers, we all idolized you and Steve Lukather, Mike Landau,
Paul Jackson Jr.,
Yeah,
Dean Parks.
absolutely, Danny Korchmar, like all these, Jay Graydon, list goes
Michael
on and
Thompson.
on. And on.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But one thing that I noticed about all of your, like Mike Landau and yourself and Steve are probably like my, at the time when I was like, this is what I want to do. You guys were my top favorite session guitar players. And you'd hear you guys play on crazy pop records and just play all this really beautiful, perfect, understated stuff and really fun solos, but really playing to the song. But then you hear your own music, and it's so harmonically rich. And I'm just curious, like, what was the guitar community in LA at that time? Like, I mean, when that time is, I don't know, probably a pretty big swath, but. What were you guys like? What were you guys listening to at that time that informed your music in the way that it is now, but still allowed you to be such song servants? Like, is that a coherent
That's a great
question?
Well, I mean, during that time for me it was the 80s. I was in my 20s. I turned 20 in 1980. So, moved there. 22 years old. So about 82, end of 82. First of all, that core of guitar players, the ones preceding, Mike or Steve or myself, because we're roughly the same age.
Yeah.
Would have been Larry Carlton, Lee Ritenour, Jay Graydon, Dean Parks. I mean, in no specific order. So that was the place to be. That was where there of course there were great guitar players in New York and in Nashville at that time, but. When I was 19, I was doing a rock or pop record, and David Hungate had just moved to Nashville from Toto. And he flat out told me, he said, you really need to go out to LA because that's the place for somebody who plays like you. That's the proving ground. And so you had this rich heritage of these guys that were just killing it during the 70s. And then, it was our turn a decade later. Larry started doing his solo records, Lee started doing his solo records, so forth, so on. And so when you have that lineage there, Ray Parker Jr. was out there playing too. Music was changing a little bit, but LA was still the quintessential pop recording market at that time. So you had to fit in. Like for somebody like me, I was asked quite a bit, how did you get in so quickly? And it was an easy answer. I was ready, but also Steve Lukather at that time quit playing sessions by and large because he had a
band.
In
Toto and
and they were rocking. So that was a big vacuum, So there was enough for several of us to step in and take over. So first of all, you had to be able to cover that, right? What Steve had done. He's obviously great soloist, but he's also a great rhythm guitar player.
I was going to say, like, the only thing more impressive than his facility as an improviser are his eighth notes.
Yes.
Like,
I mean, everything. It's just his melodic concept. So that was the bar, right?
Yeah.
So we would all sit there and play. And I mean, I got to sit next to, you mentioned Mike. I got to sit next to him so many years. And, we were just, kids in a candy store. I mean, we had these big old racks, and we get paid ridiculous amounts of money to play on these records. But the net effect, I mean, for me, and I'm assuming that it affected Mike that way too. I mean, sitting with him pulled me up. All I could ever think about was how shitty I sounded in comparison to him. But that's because we hear ourselves in a different way.
Yeah, you'll never hear yourself objectively.
Everything that he would touch sounded better to me. And it just, but and there was a good, healthy competition, but it was never insidious,
Yeah.
And so you'd sit with guys like Mike, or I sat a lot with Paul Jackson Jr. too. So,
Cool.
get my rhythm stuff together. And and so you know, basically when you were there, it brought you up. You know, everything lifted you up, and hopefully you're doing the same for them. But that's kind of the framework of that time. And you know, Tim Pierce was a massive part of that. Can't believe I didn't mention Tim.
Yeah, me neither.
I mean, that's the problem. There's so many great guitar players.
Seriously.
But so we all were kind of in that same age group, and you know, everybody brought their experience in what they grew up doing. And it was like you were getting paid to go to college.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, so it informed everything I did, as the music of the mid '70s informed pretty much where I was going compositionally, and it's stuck with me through what, you know, now I'm 95, so
You're looking great for now.
yeah.
Really.
That makes 65 not sound so bad. But yeah, it had a massive effect on me, and it also helped me transition, which I had no idea what my career. I had a rock band for about 2 seconds. We had some hits. Didn't know that was going to happen, and then we immediately in the '90s crashed and burned when grunge came out. So I ended up in Nashville, back in Nashville where I grew up. But it was either learn how to play sessions in Nashville or move back to LA, and I chose the former. And learning how to play sessions in LA showed me how to learn to play sessions in Nashville, even though I was a horrible country guitar player. But it was the right time because they wanted a little bit of what I had done out there. Plus, I was a hungry student.
Yeah.
And then I got to sit next to like Brent Mason freaking every day.
Yeah.
And again, same thing. It just, I played a little bit of what he could do. I mean, nothing like what he could do at the chicken picking.
Yeah, there's nobody like him.
No,
like that.
but but you had to cover some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So basically what it does is it like I had to learn my style of what chicken picking was, which is nothing like his. But that's the point. It was nothing like his. I couldn't do it, so I had to do mine, and that found its place too.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was nice.
That's awesome. So what was when you were sort of before you got on the scene and you were, you said you came up into the scene pretty quickly because you were ready. What were you listening to that got you ready?
Well, everything from the '70s. I mean, that was it. I mean,
Right.
that was this. The one record. I'll say one. I'll give you 4 records. I'll give you 5 records.
Come on, give us 6.
One was never. Boz Scaggs. I loved his records because they had great guitar players, right?
Yeah, Low Down.
Well, the next one,
Okay.
which I don't know if it had a hit, but it was called Down to Then Left.
Yeah, okay.
I think it was Steve's. I think Steve was like 19 when that came out. He played a couple solos on it, so that was kind of eye-opening because he had his own thing. But the primary guitar players on that record, if I remember correctly, were Jay Great and Ray Parker Jr.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And it was like a seminar on how guitar players complement each other. The composition, the sounds. That record informed like 80% of how I learned how to play rhythm guitar.
Yeah.
Because that was that's your moneymaker. I mean, solos are great and that's fun, but where you get your work is if you know how to integrate into a band.
Yeah.
Meaning rhythm, and you got to play in time and all that, feel, and with composition. That record was great. Another guitar smorgasbord was Asia by C.
Of course, yeah.
So that covered, God, how many guitar players were on that record? Mm-hmm. Larry Carlton's Room 335. I mean, that was biblical.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
Lee Ritenour's Captain's Journey was staggering. He did that with Dave Grusin, and I mean, again, I'm singling out ones that I got.
Yeah.
That really informed me. Those records had a phrase, the way Larry Ben or Lee, all the stuff that they did, I was like taking all that in as a teenager.
Yeah.
And that all was coming out between the ages of 15 and 20 for me.
Yeah.
So that was like all of us. That's the primo spot. Not that you stop learning, but I was inundated with those records at that time. Joe Walsh's So What record.
Oh, okay.
Which it affected me in more ways than I've learned how much that's affected me in my 50s and 60s. Like that one, because it was always on in my bedroom and I was always playing to it.
Yeah.
That was 5 records. So, I mean, there were more, but that's, here's another one. An Eric Clapton record, but not one that you'd think. It was Ocean Boulevard record.
Oh.
I know, and it was he was playing, you know, I think he was kind of burnt out on the Cream thing.
Yeah.
He was playing mostly clean Strat, and then he was playing. I loved his dobro playing,
Yeah.
slide playing. You know, and like I didn't realize how much that affected me until I started trying to play dobro in Nashville.
Yeah, right.
And my buddy Paul Franklin said, "Oh no, you should do it because you don't play like anybody." I said, "Well, I can hardly play it too." He said, "You'll figure that out."
Yeah.
But so anyway, that's a kind of a microcosm of what affected me. So when I moved to Los Angeles, that had just happened, right?
Yeah.
So and then you know obviously Toto, so that was there too. Jeff Beck, the Wired record was.
Mm-hmm.
But all that stuff informed what was going on because most of that was recorded in Los Angeles.
Yeah, right.
So I had all that. So basically, you step into this situation, and you know, all of a sudden, okay, I'll put on my Larry Carlton hat or my Ray Parker Jr. or my
Rittenauer hat. Yeah, yeah.
Steve Lukather hat was the you know that was a good one to wear too because everybody had just used him, you know, on everything for about 5 years. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's really what it was.
Oh, that's exactly what I'm looking for. It's just it's great. It's great to hear you talk about that. So I grew up. My dad was he's still a musician, but he was a working musician when we were kids, and both my parents are huge music lovers. So I grew up on essentially the same music you just, you know, like there was tons of Steely Dan, Boz Scaggs, Little Feat, lots and lots of Little Feat, Ry Cooder, stuff like that. So I always grew up listening to, you know, a pretty sophisticated music. So I think I just gravitated toward those sounds just because it reminds me of, you know, being a kid. Of course, I didn't listen to the Beatles until I was like 28. Because my dad was like, "Oh, there's not enough chords in the Beatles songs."
Oh,
well,
wow.
that's actually plenty of chords in the Beatles.
Yeah, there were.
I don't know. I'm paraphrasing. I don't think my dad ever said that, but there wasn't a lot of Beatles or the band or like more bandy stuff that people who play sort of occupy my sort of genre. Well, I didn't discover a lot of that music until I was a lot older because it was just like my dad, listened to a lot of Steely Dan and Little Feat and Bonnie Raitt. And
if it didn't have, I mean, my lens was so narrow as a 20-year-old. If it didn't have like what I thought, I mean, this is a little snotty snob 20-year-old kid, but there were certain guitar players that fired me up, and if it didn't have that kind of harmonic expression or like, you know, a certain amount of speed, because I was a real Al Di Meola Elegant Gypsy fan. So, so it had to have that. So consequently, I missed so much important music, like the band, until I was way later in life. Yeah. Beatles, I was, you know, my first Beatle record was Let It Be. I thought that was the quintessential record. I missed all the 60s, you know. Yeah. But the same thing. It's like you kind of if it didn't have those kind of guitar players, because I was always reading the credits, I just bypassed most of it.
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing, and it wasn't until later when I went back and listened to some of that stuff and was like, oh, this is brilliant. Like you know the band in their own right. Yeah. You know, like what a gift that music is. But I didn't get it right away. You know, same thing for me. Ry Cooder was huge in our house, and it was always just the weird stuff that my dad really liked. And it wasn't until I was in my later 20s and early 30s when I was like, oh, this is you know, it became my favorite.
Did he affect a lot of your slide playing the way he did it?
Not really, because by the time I was really into playing slide, I wasn't really checking him out. Now, I mean, at this point, I guess it's safe to say he has crept in there for sure. But I just I like the way he's kind of fearless. Yeah. Like he just doesn't hold back ever, and I really am inspired by that. But,
that's interesting. I mean, I'm a bit older than you, but so probably more than a bit older than you. But the fact that you heard all those records, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's all thanks to my folks.
Yeah, I'm probably the age of your dad. That's right. That would be it.
I think my dad might be a little older than you, but yeah. I'll be 38 in June. So
I got a 39-year-old kid, man. You could, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Were you anywhere near Winnipeg in the 80s?
I don't think so.
Dad?
So that could be your daughter is my grandchild, right?
That's for sure. Yeah.
No wonder she likes my music.
Yeah. I'll get the paperwork sent over. And the podcast takes a real departure. I don't know. Do you want to ask some questions about sounds?
I'm good. This has been awesome. Yeah, I would love to hear I mean, I don't have any other questions. So honestly, you play us out with some tones. That'd be awesome.
Did you have any that I sent you one of those tracks? Could I play along with one of those tracks or no?
He can't do the playback on it yet, but
Oh, you can't?
yeah, but no, just whatever you got. It was good. What you were warming up with was good too. Like
was I
some of the
warming
stuff
up
from the record. You were warming up with some of the stuff from the record.
Oh, you know what I was playing? I love this little. I played it on the gut string. Let's do this thing. I think I know of it right now. I really
perfect.
love that song. That's
Yeah.
the song I wrote for my wife, and then she ended up wanting another song. Yeah. That's the lick. That was supposed to be. And I played a dobro solo on it.
Yeah, beautiful.
Goes on and on.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Dan, thanks so much for hanging out with us.
My pleasure. My absolute pleasure. Thank you both. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody.